Right, so let's talk about Google's leaked anti-racism training. So, to put this in context, you are probably aware that Google is a Californian company, and because it's in California, it has a significantly left-wing bias. You may remember that when Trump was elected to the presidency, the leadership of Google literally wept. Literally.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, they did. they do these thank God it's Friday meetings in Google, and someone recorded them and leaked them. And you can see it says confidential internal only. Well, someone leaked them in 2018, and you can see the dismay on their faces. They look like they've just been conquered by Hitler, and it's just like, oh God, this has gone badly. It's like, look, it was great. Shut up, everything was fine, but it was huge. It was just incredibly, and when I say like they think they've been conquered by Hitler, I'm not joking, right? Co-founder Sergey Brin can be heard comparing Trump supporters to fascists and extremists. Ah yes, the moderates at Google are saying that the Trump supporters are extremists, right? He argues that like other extremists, Trump supporters were motivated by boredom.
What? That's the weirdest interpretation of any political motivation ever. Oh, you're only voting for them because you're bored?
Yeah, that's not why MAGA voters were voting Trump. There's nothing to do with boredom. It's everything to do with the leftists taking over the country. But he thinks that it's boredom that leads to fascism and communism. What a bizarre perspective Google have.
I don't think I've ever heard someone use boredom to explain any political position.
It's just so ridiculous. Yeah, so the fascists were all just bored, you see.
It's like something a condescending parent would say to their child, oh, you're just bored. Go do something else. Go on.
Idle hands are the devil's work, says Sergey Brin, and that's how Hitler came to power. The Vice President for Global Affairs, Ken Walker, argued that supporters of populist causes like the Trump campaign were motivated by fear, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there. That's a bit may or may not be there. Well, can we resolve that Schrodinger's point? And are they there or not?
Schrodinger's bigotry.
Yeah, but like a desire for answers that may or may not be there. So yeah, a desire for answers. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Like, it's so weird. But anyway, so he said Walker also said that Google should fight to ensure that the populist movement, not just in the US but around the world, is merely a blip and a hiccup in a historical arc that bends towards progress. It's obviously a pastiche of what Martin Luther King said, where it bends towards justice. But no, it's all progress now. You have to understand.
So, populism just in general as well.
Yeah.
So
worldwide populism.
They've just outed themselves as elitists.
Yes, openly. I mean, they do run Google, so...
it's difficult to deny at that point, isn't
it? It is. Sundar Pichai, the CEO, stated that the company would develop a machine learning and AI to combat what an employee described as misinformation shared by low-information voters. Keep tarnishing yourself with that elitist label, can't you? And the CFO, Ruth Porat, appeared to break down in tears, describing the 2016 election results, saying Trump's win was really painful and the election went the wrong way.
So pathetic. Just breaking down in tears at an election at all.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Why would you even let people know about that? That should be a point of shame.
It is a point of shame. I mean, if Jeremy Corbyn had been elected, I wouldn't cry over it. I'd just be like, oh, God. I'd expect tax rises like we got under Boris. Anyway, so Christopher Rufo is the goodest boy when it comes to exposing anti-racism training, critical race theory, in various institutions, and someone leaked to him Google's anti-racism initiative. And it is as full-on, balls-to-the-wall wacko as you can imagine. I mean, it is the most extreme interpretation of anti-racism that one could have. No other concerns outside of the Marxist framework have been the racial Marxist framework have been presented at all, right? And so we'll go through his thread here that's been widely reported on, because it's just staggering the things that internally Google is brainwashing its own employees to believe. Google launched an anti-racism initiative, claiming that America is a system of white supremacy and that all Americans are raised to be racist, including Ben Shapiro, who is depicted as a layer of the white supremacy pyramid that culminates in genocide.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro is part of the white supremacy pyramid and is going to end in genocide.
I don't know how you can come
Big
to that
brain times.
conclusion. Just like, yeah.
Well, you have to see, right? I'm about halfway through doing the notes on the massive critical race theory book. This is boilerplate for their perspective on all of this. This is exactly what they say, right? So they think that America is a system of white supremacy because a colorblind, race-neutral system allows white people to succeed more than others because of history and their just privilege, I guess we'd describe it as. And this means that all Americans who support a neutral system are in fact supporting racism, and therefore the entire country is racist, the system is racist, all the Americans are racist, and they're lunatics.
There's a weird juxtaposition here between them behaving in a very elitist way and also saying, yeah, the system that we are at the top of is a system of white supremacy. Isn't that just a really huge condemnation of their own company?
We know because we're at the top of it. You know, like, it's like, okay, so... And the thing is, as well, like, the people that they're recommended to read, people like Robin DiAngelo, the white people who are critical race theorists, openly call themselves racists. And it's like, right, okay. Why are we listening to them?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we
That's
listening
exactly
to
what I was going to say.
Self-professed. But anyway, moving on to the next one. So first we get to the sort of racial re-education program. Rufo says, I've obtained a trove of whistleblower documents from inside Google that reveal the company's extensive racial re-education program based on the core tenets of critical race theory, including intersectionality, white privilege, and systemic racism. So it is as dyed-in-the-wool as you can imagine, right?
I mean, calling anything a re-education program gives it a sinister tone straight out of the Soviet Union, so I don't know why they would choose that.
In their defense, Rufo characterized it like that. But the thing is, I suspect his characterization is accurate, because as you can see here, exactly what's going on. But intersectionality, white privilege, and systemic racism, so you're getting the full Robin DiAngelo experience here. So the next one is allyship. Let's talk about allyship in action. Google trained employees to deconstruct their racial and sexual identities, then rank themselves on a hierarchy of power and privilege, then manage their reactions through crying and accessing their happy place.
So Google's trying to make their employees cry.
Yes.
And also getting them to do stuff which is in no way whatsoever related to their job.
Well, I mean, this to me sounds very much like a cult.
Well, yeah. You're going to have to confess your sins and then amend those sins
in a group struggle session.
Exactly. Yeah. And to the point where you break them down to tiers. That's like 101 cult recruiting strategy. You break someone down to their most fundamental level where they're emotionally unstable, and then you're just like, well,
completely
here is
isolated.
a solution to your bad feelings. Here we go. Yeah. Adhere to Google, worship at the altar of technology.
Yeah, and I read a book and did a study on it. It was called The Wrong Way Home by Dr. Arthur Diekman, who was a Californian psychologist in the 70s. And he went through various cults, and it was all about cult behaviors. And one of them is literally, they call this processing. So the cult that he was studying, they would process people and get them around in a room, literally do exactly this, break them down, deconstruct all of their ideas about themselves and their relationships to other people, to the point where they're crying, and the rest of the group is basically like, literally struggle session style, like pointing fingers at them. And then they sit there like on one-on-one sessions, processing them, bringing them into the ideology of the cult. And so then they become like incredibly insular, and then they hate outsiders and things like that. And it's like bring them into what they describe as like a safe area, sort of a happy place.
We did also do we did a video on the website, didn't we, about cults at one point? That was quite a while ago now.
Yeah, but still worth checking out, because this is apparently is what is happening at Google. If you can get up the wheel of power and privilege, please, John. This is what I think is the best one. This is them explaining how everyone other than white people are weak and pathetic and lack power. I mean, I'm sure
those are their words, right?
Well, well, that's just what this is.
Okay,
I mean,
that's what it's implying. Yeah.
As you can see, the power is in the center and the marginalized are on the outside. So if you look at the race one, the skin color, power is white, marginalized is dark. Oprah Winfrey's just like, yeah, God, if only I could get some power. If only someone would pay me some attention.
Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Never had any power.
Exactly, it's mad. And so just to let you know who the most important people are, they're English, rich, cisgender, own property, slim, robust, neurotypical, heterosexual, able-bodied, post-secondary education, white, and citizens. I mean, I guess, like, if that's your opinion, but I just see them as people. But I mean, like, most of these things, like speaking English in an English-speaking country.
That should be a prerequisite for being there in the first place, right?
But it's naturally an advantage.
Well,
like, if I went to France, I would be marginalised because I don't speak French. That's not an intersectional, like, hierarchy of oppression. And as John points out, Asians top whites anyway in the US, which they do, and Indians over here, and everyone tops the English over here. So these are all based on assumptions that aren't really true. But like, owns property or is homeless. Well, yes, it's an advantage to own property rather than being homeless. Like, I mean, well observed, but that's not an inherent racial privilege or something. You know, so these are just, neurotypical, as in not mad, or significant neurodivergence, as in insane. Would you rather be sane or insane, Josh?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah, exactly. Check your privilege. You've got to be careful. So this is the way that they view the world. White, cisgender, English-speaking people are superior to all of those browns. And they're not racist. Well, no, they are racist, actually. They actually call themselves racist. And they have lots of rationale for it. Anyway, moving on. They, of course, have people like Ibram Kendi, the most credible of credible academics, having, video lectures to the rest of the Google staff. In this one, guest lecturer Ibram Kendi claimed that all Americans, including children as young as 3 months old, are racist. 2-month-old children, babies, not racist. Once they hit 3, though, boom.
I don't even understand what
Full
basis he has for that, because I think you have to be over a couple of years old to even get that level of socialization. Like,
yeah.
I hate to say it, but the perception of race and racism in general, it requires a bit more time to develop. It's not an inherent thing.
The thing is, my son goes to school, they're like kids of all different races, and he never mentions their skin colour. He calls them by name, because they're named individuals in his world of network of relations. He's not thinking abstract class of race, and he doesn't think in this way. And so the fact that they can call 3-month-olds racist, I mean,
it's awful,
come on.
Really.
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous though. Like, come on, like they're babies, they can't even crawl. Like they goo goo gaga and they crap themselves. They're not like sat there going, black people are inferior. They don't do that. Believe it or not. But he says to be raised in the United States is to be raised to be racist. And to be raised to be racist is to be raised to be almost addicted to racist ideas. Addicted to racist ideas.
But surely he was raised in America, wasn't he?
That's a great point.
Surely he would also be raised with racist ideas.
But he would counter this by saying, yes.
Then why should we listen to him, then?
Because he's a racist. That's his argument. He's a racist, therefore he's an expert on racism. But you're in denial that you're a racist. That's the thing. And once you get on his level, you can all be racist together. I don't know why they want this.
It's just,
Well,
why?
he carries on. The youngest of people are not colorblind. Toddlers are beginning to understand race and see race by 2 years old. If we're just imagining that they're colorblind, then we're not protecting them with racist ideas. Protecting them with racist ideas.
I don't know how he's qualified to make
He's
these. Not. Yeah, because I know that the only difference really in that kind of stage is that infants and babies can recognise faces of their own race slightly easier and more quickly than others. But that's
shock and surprise.
That's not really a racist thing. That's biologically imprinted.
Yeah, babies recognise people who look like them more than they do with people who don't look like them. What a shock. What,
revelation.
Yeah, exactly. Who could have imagined? Anyway, moving on. They're very much anti-science. Denial of racism is proof that a person is racist. Checkmate. You thought you weren't racist? Well, that's what a racist would say. For me, the heartbeat of racism is denial, and the sound of denial is, I'm not racist, Kendi told Google employees. It's a critically important step for Americans to no longer be in denial about their own racism. A critically important step for him to gaslight and grift his way into getting you into his cult. That's what it is. Americans must not be in denial of their own racism. This is as unscientific as Marx and Freud. No, it's totally unfalsifiable. You're either racist or you're a racist in denial. This is how this works. Right?
I appreciate that you're saying Freud is unscientific. I
totally.
really despise.
Yeah. Well, it's
it brings a
totally
bad
true.
name to psychologists.
Yeah.
Although
Anyway.
we don't help ourselves.
No. Moving on. So, Everything is Slavery. The next one is Nicole Hannah-Jones, who claimed this is the author of the 1619 Project, the project the New York Times had to come out and disavow because it was ahistorical and obviously about lulling people into a cult. She said that she created the 1619 Project to verify her lifelong theory that everything in the modern-day United States can be traced back to slavery. If you name anything in America, I can relate it back to slavery. Yes, you can, because that's all you talk about. That's all you think about. I believe that you can. And let's pick a random one out of the air. The anti-slavery movement. That's related to slavery. Checkmate, Whitey. Gotcha. You want to abolish slavery? That's related to slavery. She's got us, man. She's got us. Right, moving on. She talks about the 1619 Project nonsense. Jones claimed that the first African Americans being sold in 1619 is more foundational to the American story than the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock. Makes you wonder, because if it wasn't for the Pilgrims landing, how would they have sold slaves in America?
Yeah, that's kind of a prerequisite, isn't it?
Yeah, it literally is
to
required.
have people there
Yeah.
to do it in the first place.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting. So the first Africans being sold on the White Line is more foundational to the American story. Don't see how it could be. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the overt/covert pyramid of white supremacy. I love this. Do you want to get this image up, John? This is amazing, right? Look at the top. You've got lynching, hate crimes, blackface, Justin Trudeau, the N-word, racist jokes, racial slurs, the KKK, burning crosses, and neo-Nazis. These are overt signs of white supremacy, and most of those were Democrat initiatives, just to point that out. So the left wing has been overtly white supremacist, so now they've gone to covert white supremacy. Get a load of some of this. So, calling the police on black people. Colorblindness. White parents self-segregating. Eurocentric curriculum. Education funding from property... education funding from property taxes. Tone policing. Not believing the experiences of BIPOC. MAGA. Don't blame me, I never owned slaves. Bootstrap theory, the high infant mortality rate for non-white people, all lives matter, assuming good intentions are enough, anti-immigration policies, fearing people of colour, paternalism, listed twice, for some reason, saying there's only one human race, and considering African-American vernacular English uneducated.
Pretty much everything
Yeah.
is there.
It's mad, isn't it? Literally everything there is totally normal, like respectability politics. Don't be a piece of S.
So, conducting yourself in a way in which people can admire rather than being a complete horrible person, yeah.
Having standards is covert white supremacy. Socially acceptable white supremacy.
What a condemnation
Yeah.
of anyone who isn't white, though, by saying that.
And just to be clear, these people do not speak for people who aren't white. They speak
Of
for
course,
lunatic
yeah.
leftists, But yeah, go on.
But it's just bizarre that they say these things that are just taken for granted as premises for their own assertions about white supremacy that are far more demeaning than many of the things that actual explicit racists say about people. And it's bizarre.
I've just seen one there that I didn't mention, because there are obviously loads I haven't mentioned. Denial of racism is covert white supremacy. But that's not the best pyramid. They love their pyramids for some reason. But then this has all been brainwashed into the Google employees. So the next one is the pyramid of white supremacy. And this is hilarious, right? Because we can get this one up. This is how we tie Ben Shapiro to anti-Semitic genocides. So it begins, as you can see, it's the 7 stages of normalization, from normalization to genocide. So indifference, minimization, veiled racism, discrimination, calls for violence, violence, and mass murder. And there we have people as the examples. The All Lives Matter movement is indifference. Ben Shapiro is minimization. MAGA is veiled racism. And Trump and who's next to him is discrimination, which is racial profiling, mass incarceration, racial slurs, fear of POC, and anti-immigration policies. Trump doesn't fit into half of that, but anyway. And the next level up is calls for violence, like Gavin McGuinness, Tommy Robinson, and Richard Spencer. Now, Gavin McGuinness, I think, actually has called for violence, not racial violence, but against the Democrats. But I can't think of an example of Richard Spencer or Tommy Robinson calling for violence. So, don't know why they're there. But anyway, then it goes up to violence itself, which is, I guess, like lynchings. But I'm not familiar with these pictures. One of them is a police officer arresting someone. And then the top is, of course, mass murder. We've got mass shooters like Brenton Tarrant and Anders Breivik. So that's how Ben Shapiro is basically Anders Breivik. It's a continuum, you see. It's a slippery slope, as it were.
How can anyone take this seriously? It's so ridiculous.
They can't. Well, they shouldn't. And, this is absurd.
Well, the fact that Google, one of the largest companies in the world, has this being proselytized to their employees, probably they have no option as well, whether they can
absolutely.
They get this brainwashing or not.
Yeah. And I wonder how much this cost Google, too. Because like Ibram X. Kendi will probably be charging like tens of thousands of dollars for his seminars. And it's absurd. But this is what they're doing at Google. So it's not even like, it's not they're saying, well, maybe we could just be aware of people's pronouns. That would be nice. Maybe we don't call each other ethnic slurs or something. And be cautious. No, full on balls to the wall. Oh, by the way, Ben Shapiro is on a continuum to black genocide. So be careful. This is where Google is as a company philosophically on the inside.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to prelotuseaters.com and get access to all our premium content.
Things like our book club, where we examine classics like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and examine the themes that underpin it, and now we're getting worryingly close to that, or modern books like Mark Sidwell's The Long March, which is how exactly we ended up in the current cultural situation we're in and what conservatives can do about it. Or you can check out the other series we have, such as our Contemplation series, where Hugo and Josh decided to, in the latest one, have a look at an examination on the ways that other elections have been rigged for no reason at all. Or you can check out our Epoch series, which is one of my personal favorites because this is where I get to talk about history. And I love talking about just random things from history. And one of the great things we can do with this series is talk about those things that aren't so often discussed. So, you can talk about Xerxes' army, the vast army that invaded Greece during the Greco-Persian Wars. Or we can go through things like Herodotus' view on the Scythians. Who are they? You probably don't know, but they used to be quite an important people a long time ago, and they're very, very interesting. We've got some really good reports about them. Or we've got premium podcasts, which is things we generally don't want to put outside of the paywall because we might get in trouble from, such as the list of things that Alex Jones was right about. Or we do just very interesting discussions because there are things that we do lots of work on. Another one is that I'm particularly proud of is where Christopher Hitchens, the famous new atheist, would have fallen during the modern culture wars, because he probably wouldn't have been very woke. But we also have lots of interviews and articles and other things on the website that you can sign up to enjoy, and we're really proud of them.
So if any of that sounds good to you, go over to lotuseaters.com and sign up for as little as £5 a month to support us, keep the show going, and also to get access to all the content. Thank you and goodbye.